Hey guys, welcome back to DIY guitar making. In this episode, we're still going on the parlor guitars theme, and I have a nice big chunk of Wengi right over here. Look at this beautiful piece of wood. You can be forgiven for not thinking it's beautiful. It's actually, Wengi is notoriously kind of bland, but I think it looks beautiful. One part of its beauty is how reliably straight grained, or quarter sawn and straight grained Wengi is. You can really find good samples of it. It hasn't been totally plundered, let's say. And so right here you can see that I have some good quarter sawn bits over here, and I'm going to use this giant board here to get a number of things for my guitar number 86 parlor guitar, which is the one that's going to be pretty much an all Wengi guitar. We're going to have a Wengi bridge, Wengi fretboard, Wengi back and sides, which I already have right here, and we are going to have a Wengi headplate as well. So for the bridge, certainly I want this really nice quarter sawn bits over here. You can see it gets more rift sawn as it travels towards the what would be the center of the log here, which is true for, you know, all boards of wood you would have. So you're always going to have a quarter sawn area that, even in the best case, it's going to start to drift to rift sawn pretty rapidly. So anyway, I'm going to use this good section here, certainly for the bridges. So the bridge comes from over here. I can get the fretboard from over here as well, although I really could get away with more rift sawn or even flat sawn material for a fretboard, but it is a bit more optimal and ideal to get it from the quarter sawn side. And then there's the head plate, which honestly, that's aesthetic. I can get that from anywhere on this board. Over on the rift sawn side is totally fine. So I might try and get as many fretboards and bridges from this area as I can. The first thing I think I'm going to do, though, is just cut a big veneer off of here. Resaw it off as you would for cutting backs and sides. And I'm going to get my head plate from there. Then I'll have a lot of extra material. I could even use it for a whole nother back and side set on another guitar. But I really just need one head plate from that. And then we still have plenty of thickness to work with to cut out fretboards and bridges. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just take this over to the jointer and clean up this surface and the other edge down here. One, to prepare it for resawing, I need a nice square edge so that I get a nice square cut. And then also I'm going to do that on both sides just so that I can have a fresh surface to mark out on this side. Let's jump right into that. Let's head over to the jointer. Alright, and now that this is squared up, this sits on a flat surface. This sits not perfectly, but reasonably square, and I'm fine with that. So that way, when I run it on the table of the bandsaw, it should sit reasonably square there as well, which will give me a consistently thick plate that I'm trimming off of the end here. Now, let's go ahead and mark. Here I've got a marking gauge. Let's mark that plate right now. So I'm just going to take this. I have this set for just a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. This is just something that I eyeball. It's just to give me a straight line to follow on the bandsaw. I'm actually going to cut just to the outside of this scribed line. Okay, that looks pretty good. I want it to be nice and visible. So I might go over it twice in a couple areas. All right, that looks good. Let's take this over to the bandsaw and set up our resaw fence. Here we are at the bandsaw. I'm gonna open this up real tall here, tall enough so that we can pass our board under the guide bushings. Okay, go ahead and lock that. And I should mention at this point that the quality of the cut that you get, and therefore ultimately how much wood you're going to end up wasting. So if you're cutting out a lot of sheets within a given board, you can be either be very wasteful with it, meaning you cut much wider than you need to, and there's a lot of drift and you have to plane all that out later, or you have a really solid setup and you're able to cut the sheets very close to where they need to be and just need a minimal amount of planing to clean things up. That's all going to depend on a number of things, like how good of a bandsaw you have, how good of a blade you have. The blade is very important. And how good of a setup. So, you know, for example, I'm using this resaw bar here. This is a pretty low, I guess low-level solution for bandsaw drift. Pretty approachable solution, I should say. So between all of those things, between the quality of the bandsaw, the quality of the blade, and your setup here, I'm probably honestly like a C+, okay? Which means I will have a lot more to clean up than somebody who has a real A+ kind of setup, which with a really sweet bandsaw like a Laguna or something like that. And the one thing that I think I do get a good score on here with this setup is the bandsaw blade is a Resaw King, which is a very good bandsaw blade for obviously for resawing. I don't do a lot of resawing. This is very, very rare for me. Within a year, if I do any resawing at all in a single year, that's surprising to me. So it's not something I do hardly ever. And so I can afford to have a, you know, pretty simple, just getting myself by kind of setup for this kind of work. If I was batching out back and side sets, like say as a business or as a supplier, it would be on a whole different level. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this. I've got a 3/4 of an inch blade, again the Resaw King, and I have my resaw bar here, which is, you know, this is something that you can actually remove. It's an added feature onto the fence. So the reason we're not going to just run this straight through against the fence without the resaw bar is because of something called drift. So if we did that, this blade, this isn't like a table saw blade, for example, where it's going to stay rigid no matter what. And if you kind of travel a little bit, if anything, a table saw blade is going to react violently and push the piece away, but it is not going to drift. It will hold its position. A bandsaw blade, however, is a whole different tool here, a whole different animal. And so this can and will actually flex and drift around depending on basically how you're holding the wood and depending on the character of the wood itself. It's going to get sort of pushed and moved around, which we don't want. We want to stay nice and straight down that line that I scribed on there. So enter the resaw bar. The point of this is we are going to take this, and instead of running it flat, let me just lock this down just to explain this. Instead of running this flat against the fence, we are going to run it against this bar right here, which allows me, so vertically the bar will keep things nice and square, But in this dimension, right here, I can actually turn the board and correct for drift myself. And the way I'm going to be doing that is by looking at the line that I scribed, right? So I'm just going to be, as I see the blade start to drift ever so slightly away from that line, I just turn the board and watch the blade as it comes back in towards the line. And then if it gets a little too close to the line, it looks like it's about to undercut it, I go the opposite direction. And I just keep doing little micro corrections like that all the way to the end of the board. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our fence here. Lock that down.
If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.